Krishna is the lover of Radha. He displays many amorous pastimes in the groves of Vrindavan. He is the lover of the cowherd maidens of Raja and the holder of the great hill-men Govardhan. He is the beloved son of Mother Jasoda, the delighter of the inhabitants of Raja, and he wanders in the forest and on the banks of the river Jamuna. Nashtakayeshu Vajreshu Nicham Bhagavatsaya Bhagavate Kamashloke Bhakti Bhavati Nashtaki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering a service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, whose praise for transcendental songs is established as an irrevocable fact. Srimad Bhagavatam class ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Jai. Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone. Now we have a little bit of confusion with the verses. So we are starting with 33, is that correct? Or 34? Yeah, because I was told 35, 36. Anyway, let's go ahead. Text 34. Anilopi vikurvano Navasorubalanvita Sasarja Rupatanmatram Jyoti Lokasyalochanam Anilopi Vikurvano Navasorubalanvita Sasarja Rupatanmatram Jyoti Lokasyalokanam. Word Anila, air, api, also, vikurvana, being transformed, nabasa, sky, Gurubala Anvita, extremely powerful, Sasarja, created, Rupa, form, Tat Matram, sense perception, Jyoti, electricity, Lokasya, of the world, Lochanam, light to see. Translation. Thereafter, the extremely powerful air interacting with the sky generated the form of sense perception, and the perception of form transformed into electricity, the light to see the world. Please repeat after me. Thereafter, the extremely powerful air interacting with the sky generated the form of sense perception, and the perception of form transformed into electricity, the light to see the world. So there's no purport to this verse. So out of course, the Vaishnava etiquette, we don't speak on a verse that Prabhupada hasn't given a purport to. So we'll go to text 35. Anilenan vitam jyotir vikuvat paravikshitam adatambo rasamayam kalamayam sayogataha. And I'll just read the translation. When electricity was surcharged in the air and was glanced over by the Supreme, at that time, by a mixture of eternal time and external energy, there occurred the creation of water and taste. If you'd like to repeat after me. When electricity was surcharged in the air and was glanced over by the Supreme, at that time, by a mixture of eternal time and external energy, there occurred the creation of water and taste. Translation. Thereafter, the water produced from electricity was glanced over by the Supreme Personality of Godhead and mixed with eternal time and external energy. Thus it was transformed into the earth, which is qualified primarily by smell. We can see that there's that gradual additional to the elements. Purport. From the descriptions of the physical elements in the above verses, it is clear that in all stages the glance of the Supreme is needed, with the other additions and alterations. In every transformation, the last finishing touch is the glance of the Lord, who acts as a painter does when he mixes different colours to transform them into a particular colour. When one element mixes with another, the number of its qualities increases. For example, the sky is the cause of air. The sky has only one quality, namely sound, but by the interaction of the sky with the glance of the Lord, mixed with eternal time and external nature, the air is produced, which has two qualities, sound and touch. Similarly, after the air is created, interaction of sky and air, touched by time and the external energy of the Lord, produces electricity. And after the interaction of electricity with air and sky, mixed with time, external energy, and the Lord's glance over them, the water is produced. In the final stage of sky, there is one quality, namely sound. In the air, two qualities, sound and touch. In the electricity, three qualities, namely sound, touch, and form. In the water, four qualities, sound, touch, form, and taste. And in the last stage of physical development, the result is earth, which has all five qualities, sound, touch, form, taste, and smell. Although they are different mixtures of different materials, such mixtures do not take place automatically, just as a mixture of colors do not take place automatically without the touch of the living painter. The automatic system is factually activated by the glancing touch of the Lord. Living consciousness is the final word in all physical changes. This fact is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita 9:10 as follows: Maya jakshena prakriti suyate sa characharam hetunanena kunteya jagad viparivartate. The conclusion is that the physical elements may work very wonderfully to the layman's eyes, but their workings actually take place under the supervision of the Lord. Those who can mark only the changes of the physical elements and cannot perceive the hidden hands of the Lord behind them are certainly less intelligent persons, although they may be advertised as great material scientists. So Maitreya is giving us some really scientific facts here that for I guess you could say that Christianity, and not slamming Christianity at all, but it has very quick explanation of the creation. On this day, the Lord created that. The second day, the Lord created this. On the seventh day, there was rest. So that's giving a basic understanding of creation. But when you study Srimad Bhagavatam, there's so much depth and so much detail. So they've been talking about the Mahatattva, which is the sum total of all the material elements. Before that's Pradhan, which is the same, but it's neutralized. There's no agitation, there's no activity. So this impregnation of material nature we've been talking about for quite a few verses now, I think around 10 verses. And it's a very, very interesting aspect. It's completely beyond my understanding, but it's something that, you know, we can appreciate how deep and how so much knowledge and vastness there is in the Krishna conscious philosophy. Some people think Bhakti Yoga is a very simple form of self-realization. And of course it is simple. If you follow certain protocols, certain activities, then you'll get the end result. But it's actually the deepest, most wonderful philosophy that our great acharyas, who are considered the standout scholars of their time, like Jiva Goswami, Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, going back to all of the different bona fide sampradayas, that these great, great scholars have studied Bhagavatam in depth. And by grace of Srila Prabhupada, he's translated the Bhagavatam and given us so many illuminating purports that we can help understand this very technical and very deep, vast knowledge of Krishna consciousness. But Prabhupada always said that even if your intelligence isn't very high, which is, I fall into that category, we will still receive and achieve success because we have the holy name, we have devotional service. So even if you're not a big, big scholar, don't worry, it's okay. And if you're a big, big scholar, then you can use your intelligence in the service of Krishna. So the manifestation of the Mahatattva, it's been described as the germinating phase of creation. And the total consciousness, as Prabhupada's explained, is because it is the total consciousness because a portion of it is represented in all of us as the intellect. So we can actually relate to the creation because the intellect is something that we also have to one degree or the other. And it is difficult to understand this kind of knowledge. We are, after all, citizens of Kali Yuga, and we don't have great qualifications in general, but we just stick to the process and we'll achieve the end results. And in first canto of Bhagavatam, in chapter 1, verse 10, there's a very striking verse, the Manda Samanda Matayo verse, where it says, in this iron age of Kali, men almost always have but short lives. We're lucky if we live to 100. Sometimes 101, 102, 103, but that's the max and very rarely achieved. And even if that's achieved, what is the condition of the body? And those who've worked in care for the aged would know how difficult it is once the body starts getting older and more decrepit and you don't have control of your organs. And they're quarrelsome. We like to pick fights. Someone says something to us, we get all upset. We take umbrage at this, slightest bit of constructive criticism or whatever, and we're lazy. Generally, we can be very lazy, and we're misguided. We get misguided by so many bogus philosophies that are out there. We get very interested in this one, we get very interested in that one. So we're easily misguided. We're easily influenced by bad association. We get good association, then we shine. We get bad association, it starts bringing us down. So we're misguided, we're unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. So that's the symptoms of Kali Yuga, that its material world is bad enough as it is, but in Kali Yuga, we do have a lot of issues we have to contend with, as they say. And I came across an interesting example of some of these things recently. It's actually quite a staggering example of being misguided, unlucky, and lazy. And I don't often listen to the news, but I happened to listen to this thing. And it was the surprising loss of a highly radioactive device. And it was being transported. It was very small, like 5 mm by 6 mm. I think it's very, very tiny. It was being transported from a huge mining company along the highway, which was over 1,000 kilometres in Western Australia, and they lost it. Now, you would have heard that expression, well, it fell off the back of a truck. It literally fell off the back of a truck. And there was a whole brouhaha in the media about this highly dangerous radioactive device that would continue to degrade, would continue to be even more and more dangerous to human health. And they had to find it. So the mining giant Rio Tinto, they apologised for losing the radioactive capsule, and it was 1,400 kilometres of road in this highway, but it was on the Great Northern Highway. They actually found it. They had to have specialised equipment, and some poor guys were probably going through every track, and they found it like a metre or so off the road. And this thing had the potential of being highly dangerous. It wasn't something that was radioactive for a little while, then it would just dissipate. No. So there's been no further news about how it fell off the back of the truck, but I'm sure there were some heads that went rolling at that. So here we go. They've got something that's so dangerous that has to be guarded so carefully, and they lose it. It falls off a truck. So we're lazy, we're misguided, we make mistakes, all of these things. So here we are in Kali Yuga, fumbling along, trying to make the best of a bad bargain, as Prabhupada said. But just like that minuscule radioactive device, we have been found by Srila Prabhupada. So here we are in our little bubbles of suffering, and by Prabhupada's grace, he has saved us. And literally, if we stick to this path, Prabhupada has guaranteed success. All we have to do is chant 16 rounds of japa, follow the 4 regulative principles, do devotional service, read his wonderful books, and we're assured. May not happen in this life, but it will happen. It's a guarantee by Prabhupada. So back to the Mahatattva. So the Mahatattva, in the spiritual sky, the Paravyoma, a little bubble forms. And that little bubble is the Mahatattva. And that bubble then becomes all of the universes. It expands into creation. And it's sometimes described as a cloud in the corner of the vast spiritual sky, or Paravyoma. And it contains some of the material elements. And as I said before, the neutral stage is known as pradhan. So then when time comes into play, and time is represented by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then things start happening. Activity starts. And the pradhan becomes agitated, and the Mahatattva and then the variety of creation come into action. And we can read here how first it starts with sky, then air, and etc., etc. So all the elements and all inferior and superior qualities are due only because of the Lord's glance. So everything is resting, is pivoting on one thing. What's that? Yes, Krishna, Krishna's glance. So without Krishna's glance, there's nothing. Just like Prabhupada gives this wonderful example of the painter. All the colours can be mixed together. You know, you can drop a colour and then drop another colour and it just becomes something that's, unattractive. But by Krishna's careful mixing of the different colours, by his intervention, then this perfect creation takes place. So he, in every transformation, it has to have that finishing touch of the glance of the Lord. He's integral to everything. He's the master painter who combines all the necessary ingredients. And Prabhupada teaches us too that there are many transcendentalists, getting back to that misguided element of Kali Yuga, citizenship. So they're trying in their different methods of realization. It might be yoga, it might be meditation, but in this age of Kali, the only effective means of meditation is chanting japa. It has the most effect. Harinama, Harinama, Harinama eva kalo, kalo nasteva, nasteva, gatiyanyata. In this age of Kali, chanting the holy name, chant the holy name, chant the holy name. And then we'll get results. And then in that report, actually in verse 31, Prabhupada explains how to be free from mental speculation. Because we all love to speculate so much, don't we? And even in Krishna consciousness, sometimes it's like, oh, no, Prabhupada said, and you go, oh, where did he say that? Who did he say it to? So we also have to be very careful of the Prabhupada said. And I came across this really amusing example some time ago where one Vaishnavi was in Prabhupada's room and saying to Srila Prabhupada, oh, but Prabhupada said. And Prabhupada's looking at her and she goes, yes, Prabhupada said. And Prabhupada said, I didn't say that. And she goes, no, Prabhupada said. Prabhupada said, I'm Prabhupada. I didn't say it. So we need to back up the Prabhupada says, just as we need to be able to back up what we have learnt in the scriptures. So that's why studying is important. So we can say, well, yes, in second canto, hopefully you remember the chapter and verse. I never do, I only can remember the canto. You can cite your reference. It's very important that Prabhupada said that we have to study these books like a lawyer studies their law books. And a good lawyer will be familiar with all the different legislations and all the different precedents that they occur in their lawyering. So I know that's not a word, but I've used it anyway. So we hear with love and we hear with submission. So that submission is important, but it doesn't mean that we don't question. Prabhupada always liked questions. And, there's no silly questions. So it's always really good to think, because it means that you're starting to think. And Jayapataka Maharaj tells this nice story when he was a bhakta, that he would always ask Prabhupada a question whenever he was in a lecture, because he felt Prabhupada really liked to hear a question and he liked to be able to answer them. So this one day he was not at the class and no one asked a question. And Prabhupada said, "Where is that Bhakta Jai? He always has nice questions." So especially when you're going to see your spiritual master, have some good questions there. In the course of your study, there may be a question you haven't been able to answer. Then have those there. But don't ask him questions about, when I should get married, or, where I should go. Important to ask them, ask your spiritual master spiritual questions. And of course, the great authorities, we know in Bhagavatam, the 12 Mahajans, they're listed. Can anyone name any of the Mahajans? Swayambhuva, Brahma, Shiva, Shambhu, Ali, yes. Yes. Dhruva is not one of them, no. So Swayambhu, which is Brahma, Narada, Shambhu, which is Shiva, Kumara, the 4 Kumaras, Kapila, Manu, Prahlad, Janaka, who's Sita's father, Bhishma, Bali, Shukadev, and Yamaraj. And poor Yamaraj has a very thankless task, but we shouldn't condemn him. He's doing a great service for Krishna. And I came across another interesting thing, that with the talking about the misguided nature of Kali Yuga citizens, that Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he explains that Putana represents the pseudo-guru, or the false guru. And I found that quite an interesting correlation. The story of Putana. She was a witch, a demoness. She disguised herself as a beautiful young woman. She went to Vrindavan, and Mother Yasoda, Nanda Baba, they're also taken by her beauty. They let her pick up baby Krishna, and she had smeared poison on her breast, and the idea was then that Krishna would die. But of course, Krishna sucked her life air out. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, the devotee who worships the holy name should first petition the Lord for the strength to cast out all these unfavorable tendencies, and should pray thus before Lord Hari on a daily basis. So prayer, or pratana, is a very important part of our devotional practices. So when we stand before the deity, we should pray to the deity. You can pray in Sanskrit or you can pray in English. Prabhupada said both are equally acceptable. So pray to the Lord. Pray, please, my dear Krishna, help me find some sincerity. Help me in this particular part of my devotional service. Help me to be non-judgmental. All of these things we can pray to the Lord for. Best not to pray for material things, but Krishna is our Father. Who else can we pray to? So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that by doing this regularly, the devotee's heart will eventually become purified. Just by attending Bhagavatam class, that's a process of purification. And very soon we'll achieve the desired result, which is to see Krishna. And Sri Krishna has killed a number of demons which may arise in the kingdom of the heart. So in order to destroy these problems, a devotee must cry very humbly before the Lord and admit defeat. Then the Lord will nullify all contaminations. So we're helpless. We're helpless little jivas, and we've been stumbling around in Kali Yuga and in this material world for a very, very long time. So that humility and that sincere prayer is very, very important. And the pseudo-guru, or those who misguide, may appear as a deceitful so-called guru who preaches sense gratification or liberation or both. And we can see that in many of, I don't like to name names, but we've got some of the, at least in the 70s, we had the Guru Maharajis, we had so many other unbona fide gurus that led their disciples astray. There can be the inwardly manifest spiritual guide in the form of the mundane empiric reasoning. So we're not willing to, we want ascending knowledge, we're not accepting descending knowledge. And we are followers of the descending knowledge, that the Lord is giving us the information through the great acharyas like Srila Prabhupada. And we need to have that appreciation of these great devotees, because Krishna says in the Gita, after many births and deaths, he who is actually surrendered unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is, such a great soul is very rare. Bahunam jnanamante jnanavam prabhajate. And then there's a very nice letter I came across that Prabhupada wrote to Malati. Malati is one of our Vaishnavi GBCs and one of the very, very first devotees, as you probably know. And Prabhupada writes to her, "My dear Malati, please accept my blessings. I am in due receipt of your letter dated 17th of February 1970 and have read the contents carefully. I am so glad to hear from you after so long time. It is not surprising that you feel the competition of Maya very keen, because we are in the midst of an ocean of Maya. Just as if when you are in the ocean you say, oh, there is water all around, that is ocean. So you must have a boat very strong, and Krishna is the nicest boat to carry you over the ocean of Maya. The ocean will reduce to become a pit left by the hoof of a cow by the grace of Krishna, and it may be crossed over without any care. And after crossing the ocean, the devotee shall go to the abode of Krishna where there is no more danger. That is the mission of our life, and that is Krishna consciousness. And that's Srila Prabhupada's mission, that was unwavering determination, that he would spread Krishna consciousness and save the world, literally. So, just going back into this purport there, we're getting the details of the elemental transformation. So one element is existing, then it's mixed with the others, and it becomes double, and so on. 2 becomes 3, 3 becomes 4. So the sky, we've got that single element sound, but when it's mixed with what? The glance of the Lord, it's mixed with eternal time and external nature, then air is produced. Air has 2 qualities, sound and touch, sound and touch. So we feel the breeze on our skin. We hear the wind blowing in the trees. Then electricity, sky and air mixed again with time. The Lord glances over and water is produced. Now we have sound, touch and form. Then in the water, 4 qualities, sound, touch, form and taste. Then in the last stage of that physical development, there are 5 qualities, sound, touch, form, taste and smell. So all of those physical elements, they work well under the supervision of the Lord. So Prabhupada and Maitreya Rishi and Prabhupada's commentary keeps on referring back to this constantly, that the Lord glances over, the integration of the material elements with the blessings of the Lord. And then Krishna, he doesn't do all the work himself. He has his close personnel, his staff, the inner circle, and they're the demigods. So the demigods, they're directly following his order to manage the material manifestation. So we have Indra, who's just given us some nice rain here, so I don't have to water my garden. And we have Vayu, who's in control of the air. We have Varun, who's in control of the oceans, etc. And even we have demigods who are managing the functioning of the body. 36 million demigods, I think there are. And then we have demigods like Ganapati, who are removing the obstacles in spiritual life. And then Yamaraj, he has a very large staff with the Yamadutas, and they've got a very unpleasant job. And we just have to read 5th canto to look at that. And we don't worship the demigods, but we do respect them. It's very important that we respect the demigods, because although they're not pure devotees, they are great Vaishnavas, and they're doing that specific service for the Lord. And just as we don't find fault with the demigods, we also don't find fault with each other. It's so easy to find fault, isn't it? It's so easy to be judgmental. Nothing wrong with me, but oh, check out that one. So, you know, in Krishna consciousness, it's that, it's being introspective and taking the temperature of your behavior and your thoughts. So how am I reacting? Why is someone bugging me? Usually someone's bugging you because something about them is in you that bugs you. And if someone's, you know, bugging you, because we live in a community, some people we might find abrasive, or there might be, you know, something that you don't like the way they, you know, put on their dhoti or their tilak or whatever. Some wear Radha Kund tilak, some wear Gopi Chandan. What's with the Radha Kund tilak? So it's very important that we're not judging and we're not engaging in idle gossip. You know, it's really important because when two people come together, we like to talk, because humans we're herd animals. We like to talk. But let's talk about something positive. So when you're in a situation where someone's upset with someone else and they may be, you know, talking unconstructively, then switch it around. Try and think of something good about the person that's annoying you and glorify that. Try and, if the conversation is kind of really getting out of hand, just say, oh, okay, how about, and segue into something else. So really it's something that we are more focused on now, but in the earlier days in the movement, there was a lot of gossip. There was, you know, the great ISKCON grapevine. Something happens here, 20 minutes later, everyone knows about it in, you know, just far distant part of the world. So try and keep things in perspective. Try and look at the constructive side of things. If something has happened and it's very disturbing, don't talk about it amongst your peers. Go to a senior and say, hey, look, I heard about this. It's disturbing my mind. Can you help me understand it? So that's very important. And that's a constructive, positive way of dealing with things. And when we read Prabhupada's books, we can understand better what a rare treasure we have in Krishna consciousness. It's like if you don't have that substance behind you, then it can very easily, your devotional activities can become kind of mundane activities in one sense. You're cleaning the floor, you're cooking, you're doing all of these things. But if you don't have that understanding of why I'm doing them and the benefit of doing them, then we're not getting the full force that we could be getting. Of course, we'll get benefit, but if we go about it with consciousness and right awareness, then we'll get much, much more benefit out of it. So let's examine our hearts regularly. take the temperature, take a reading of our devotion, aspire to improve and increase our service where possible, and also being mindful that we're not the doer. Sometimes we get a little puffed up. Oh, I'm doing this or I'm doing that. Actually, you're not doing anything. You can't even blink your eyelids if the demigod doesn't want you to. So always be in that consciousness that I am not the doer, I'm the instrument. And Krishna is giving me that intelligence, Krishna is giving me that inspiration. Um, and I think we should end pretty soon. And in this verse and many other verses, Prabhupada's always referring to part and parcel. It's very interesting when you think about that. We're part and parcel of the Lord. And in a conversation with some news reporters, this took place in March 1976, Prabhupada explained it in this way. And practically every verse you read or every purport you read, we are part and parcel of Krishna. It happened so many times. I think if you did a search on Vanipedia, it would be thousands and thousands of times. So the reporter is saying to Prabhupada, which particular teachings you think can purify a man? Because you said the salvation lies in practical teachings of Gita. And Prabhupada says, yes, you have to revive your consciousness that you are part and parcel of God. And the part and parcel of God means to serve God. Just like this finger is part and parcel of my body, but it is meant for serving my body. I ask the finger, come here, it is serving me. Come here, it is scratching. Pick up the food, give it to me, and he is giving it. This is the big business of the finger. If the finger cannot carry out my order, then it is diseased. And if he immediately carries out order, then it is healthy. Similarly, we being part and parcel of God, we must be ready to give service immediately. Then it is healthy condition. If we do not, then it is Maya. So I think we'll end here, but just before we do, just to recap, so we've talked about Mahatattva and Pradhan. What's the difference between the two?
One is not yet agitated.
Yes, one's in the neutralized position. And we've discussed the essential ingredient to the whole creation. And what's that essential ingredient? Yes, very good. Krishna's glance. And then we spoke about the disqualifications of the Kali Yuga citizens that were short-lived, quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. But there's hope for us, great hope for us, with Srila Prabhupada and our spiritual masters. And then we gave the example of the radioactive device, which I found quite hilarious when I heard about it. Is an example of our misguided, unlucky. And then we talked about the transcendentalists, there are many of them, but they can't cross over because they're not surrendering to Krishna. They're engaging in this philosophical speculation. And we talked about the position of the demigods, and we looked at the part and parcel phrase, and then we spoke about the 12 Mahajans, or great souls. So thank you very much for listening. Is there any questions, comments? I'm glad you've got a question. Hope it's one I can answer.
Sure it is. It's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately because obviously we have to be really mindful about not defending devotees and thinking well of devotees and not fault finding, which is what you were mentioning before. But say like a friend has had an issue with a devotee and it's really upset them and has bothered their mind and they kind of revealing their mind to you, looking for some kind of support. Is that quite dangerous for the one listening? Because then, in my experience, I found, well, then when I see that devotee next, I start to think of them in a different light. And I'm wondering if that's constructive because you're being there as a friend for them, or is that not a constructive way?
It can be, as you said, it can be quite polluting. And whether you're actually able to help them by listening, it can be a moot point. So in cases like that, I'd probably encourage the person who, and you know, we can quite genuinely have some disruptions in our relationships with each other. You know, living in a community, it's just like if you have a shared house. For those of us when we were younger, well, I mean, when I was younger, you're all young, we have a share house and you get annoyed because someone didn't do the dishes or someone didn't put money in the kitty, and, you know, there'd be those irritations. So it's quite natural that they will rub up against each other. But if you find that it's difficult for you to just be objective and not be influenced by that person, you know, how they're feeling, which is quite natural, is I would suggest that you recommend to them that they talk to a senior person. And, you know, you can be sympathetic and say, oh, look, I'm really sorry to hear that this is upsetting you, but I think it would be really beneficial if you spoke to, you know, so-and-so or so-and-so. And then they go, no, I don't want to. So then you have to be that, that person who can say to them, well, criticizing like this or feeling upset with a devotee is not really good for your spiritual life. So can we look at ways to try and shift this a little bit? Can you think of something that you really like about the person or that you admire about the person? Or can you look at it a little more objectively rather than letting your subjective emotions take over? You know, it depends who it is, what it is, where it is. But I find that if you can recommend them to, you know, get guidance from a senior person, that's helpful. But you also want to be there as a friend, and we all like to vent sometimes. We just have to let someone vent and then listen and then try and give some positive solution to it. You know, we can't go, oh, no, I don't want to hear it, you know, because it's not very kind, because that person's come to you and they're your friend, and they feel they've got a safe space with you. But if it's affecting you negatively, and that means it's also not helping them either. Does that help?
Yeah, a lot. Thank you.
Anything else? Anibanda Prabhu?
So we hear that Krishna doesn't come in contact with the material world directly. So even though the Mahatattva is manifesting in the material world, even that glance that manifested is said to be Shiva. So therefore, Krishna doesn't directly contact matter. So I asked Bani Swami about when Krishna comes, he sends himself into the material world. How do we understand that he's not coming in contact with matter? So he responded that, well, he descends with the Holy Dharma, so he remains within the spiritual atmosphere. So, okay, he goes to Kurukshetra, he goes to Dwarka, so that's outside the Dharma. He said, well, his energies are creating the material, that the spiritual manifestation, like as an advanced party, if you like, wherever he goes. And he also gave the example that when you're bathing the deities, you're not just getting water out of the tap and pouring on. First, you're purifying it with Ganga mantra, so that, you know, the elements that you're offering to Krishna have been spiritualized. So in that way, Krishna is completely aloof and detached. He doesn't come directly in contact with the material world.
That's really interesting. Thank you very much for that. I didn't know that it was Lord Shiva who actually did that glancing.
So he's in contact. He contacts the material world on behalf of Krishna.
Thank you very much. And, you know, there's this Krishna conscious philosophy is such a wonderful philosophy that, and we're very fortunate we've got scholars like Banu Swami and, you know, the other scholars that we can ask these questions of. But thank you very much. It's really interesting comments there. Anything else? Okay. Oh, none.
Ask the classic question. Who is the creator of Krishna?
So what was that?
If Krishna creates everything else, who created Krishna?
Oh, Krishna was always there. He was never a not there. It's always Krishna.
I mean, because we also say, according to the logic, if there's a machine, we have to assume that there's someone to create the machine. So also, if Krishna is there, I mean, I guess I don't know.
Yes, but then if Krishna had to be created, then he's not the supreme.
Yeah.
It's one of those existential conundrums.
Yeah.
Krishna is always there.
Yeah.
Do you like to add anything?
Well, it's
Give me a moment.
Krishna is a purely metaphysical spiritual being. You can't understand him with mundane logic. So you have to change the paradigm of thinking completely. But Sridharma Maharaj, he mentions that, yes, everything is created. So you created God, so you just keep going back until you're at the point where you reach that being who hasn't been created, and that's God. But mundane logic you can't understand, so therefore spiritual intelligence is required.
Yes. Yes. So you're not going to get that. You have to supersede that material logic, because you can't be applied to Krishna. Good question. Jai, thank you everyone for listening. Hare Krishna, glories to Prabhupada.